Thank you and welcome to our first Scam Stoppers workshop. I want to thank the City of Hawaiian Gardens and the Cerritos Regional Chamber of Commerce for hosting this with me. I also want to thank our presenters, Lakewood Sheriff's Station Captain Keith Swenson, the California Department of Business Oversight, the California Department of Insurance, and the State Bar of California. Today is possible because all of you are giving your valuable time, and I very much appreciate it. And these are partners who are familiar to me and familiar to my office, we've worked with collaboratively. So I appreciate your ongoing support. Today is important because we all know scams happen, and scams happen to good people. They happen to all of us, and to a large extent are unavoidable to the population at large. But we as individuals can help to prevent them, and working together as a society, as a state, we know that we can stop them. In the legislature, we've been working hard to give law enforcement the tools they need to combat scammers. But our law enforcement officers can't do it alone. That is why I'm honored to have these three state agencies here tonight that are on the forefront of protecting us, along with our incredible Lakewood Sheriff's Captain. But we must help them in this fight, and we must be vigilant. I want to again thank all of our community partners, and please allow me to introduce Mayor Ronaldo Rodriguez for a welcome from the City of Hawaiian Gardens.
Good evening. As the mayor of this little city of Hawaiian Gardens, it is my pleasure to welcome you to our today, where we will learn about strategies and tips to avoid being a victim of fraud and scams. I hope that you leave feeling empowered and share your knowledge with others. Hawaiian Gardens is a great place to work. It's a great place to live, and I hope that you all come back and visit us again for events like this one right here. So I want to thank our State Assembly member, Mr. Anthony Rendon.
First of all, I want to extend a gigantic thank you to the mayor of the great city of Hawaiian Gardens. I've been here many times over the years, and it's great to be back, Mayor. It's a tremendous city that you have here. I also want to particularly thank our great Assemblymember Anthony Rendon, who represents this area. If it wasn't for him, we wouldn't be here this evening bringing all of this great information on how to avoid being victimized by fraud before his constituents here in this area. So we appreciate his concern for his constituents that brings us here this evening. I also want to thank some of my partners, particularly Antonia. We've been traveling up and down the state doing these town halls with the legislators to ensure that we try to prevent fraud from occurring in the first place as opposed to trying to address it after it occurs. That's unfortunately the more difficult task. It's a lot easier to get the information out so folks can protect themselves from it. So it's an honor to be here tonight. I asked for special dispensation tonight. The State Bar usually goes last in these programs, but I have a special dinner, an anniversary dinner with my wife this evening after 32 years, and if I do not get there at a reasonable hour, I may be a victim of a crime, but it won't be fraud. So I appreciate everybody giving me an opportunity to go first with respect to the State Bar of California. I know that for a lot of the members in the audience and for the constituents here in this area, the State Bar of California is not a known entity. And I'm going to talk about the State Bar in just a moment, but we are the entity that regulates lawyers in California. And the sad thing is when we're victimized by fraud, of course, we oftentimes and rightfully go to law enforcement and then also to a lawyer. And it's unfortunate that lawyers oftentimes are the perpetrators of fraud in the first place. I sadly know that when there's major frauds, financial frauds going on in our country, in our state, in our local areas, there tend to be lawyers involved at some level. It's a sad commentary about a great profession that we are proud of, but it is the reality of the situation when it comes to lawyers. So everyone, let me turn to our PowerPoint, and I'll go through it relatively quickly. Talk about the State Bar of California, and I'll talk about how to avoid being victimized by frauds by lawyers, sadly. The State Bar of California, protecting the public. What I mean by that is the State Bar is not an association. A lot of folks think that the State Bar represents the lawyers of California. We don't. We represent the people of California in regulating the lawyers of California. The State Bar, therefore, of California is a public regulatory body. We're housed in the judicial branch of government. Interesting. For those who like to study our governmental entities, regulatory bodies tend to exist in the executive branch. But interestingly enough, little trivia, there are two regulatory bodies in the judicial branch of government. One of them is the Commission on Judicial Performance that regulates the judges of the state of California to ensure that they comply with their ethical rules. And of course, the second one is the State Bar of California that regulates the lawyers of California. As I mentioned, the State Bar represents the people of California, not the lawyers of California. I want to stop on that first point. I'll read it for those who are tuning in. The State Bar regulates the 248,000 lawyers in the state of California. Let me repeat that. 248,000 lawyers in California. Now, we all know the jokes about too many lawyers and et cetera. I'll let others be the judge of those jokes. But how big is that number, 248,000? Well, we can look at other large states in the United States, New York, Florida, Illinois, Texas. New York doesn't have half the number of lawyers that the state of California does. That's how large our number is. And Antonia knows this because we've talked about it many times. I travel internationally at times to meet with the CEOs of attorney regulators around the world. We had a conference last fall in Berlin, and all the CEOs of the attorney regulators of the countries in Western Europe compared notes on a break after I made that statement and concluded that there aren't 248,000 lawyers in all of Western Europe. The CEO of the China bar was there. She approached me on the break and said, "Joe, we have over 2 billion people in China, and we do not have 248,000 lawyers." Therefore, as you can see on the second point, the State Bar of California is the largest regulator of lawyers in the world. I want to talk very quickly because we're here with information on how to avoid being victimized by fraud, and of course, I want to talk about how to try at least protect yourself if you need to hire a lawyer. Usually it's not a good circumstance. Sometimes it's good, adopting a child and things of that sort, but usually you're facing some trouble and you need to hire a lawyer. So let's talk a little bit about what to look for when you hire a lawyer. Because the vast majority of lawyers in the state obviously are great professionals, will do the right thing for every client that walks through their door, and we're only talking about the small percentage, but those small percentage of bad lawyers can do a lot of harm. So the first question, if you have to retain a lawyer, seems pretty obvious, but let's ask the lawyer's experience when he or she has last handled a similar case. Maybe it's a bankruptcy, maybe it's a divorce, maybe it's some other issue. Ask that lawyer that you're interested in hiring when he or she last handled a case of the type that you're interested in. The next, ask the lawyer if he or she will meet with you once free of charge before you hire them. Most lawyers will do that. They'll be happy to sit down with you, give you some time, maybe a half an hour, talk about your case and before you make a decision to hire them, and that usually is at no charge. So you should ask that question. Ask if the lawyer you're meeting with will handle your case personally. Now, a lot of times in firms with several lawyers or more, the lawyer you meet with may not be the lawyer that handles your case day to day. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But if the lawyer you're meeting with says, "I won't handle the day-to-day affairs on your case," then you should ask to meet with the lawyer who actually will handle the day-to-day affairs on your particular case and talk to that lawyer too. If they're reluctant to let you talk to that lawyer, that's a red flag. You need to be careful. Last bullet point, ask about the cost of services provided by the lawyer and to make sure you get it in writing. Now, that seems like an obvious statement, but is sometimes folks are reluctant to ask a lawyer how much they're going to charge. You have to ask that question, and you should definitely get it in writing. Any lawyer that says, oh, you don't need to worry about a document or something in writing, you can trust me, that's a red flag. And if they ask for cash, that's also a red flag. It doesn't necessarily mean it's absolutely wrong, but you should be careful if they're asking for cash. Signs of possible lawyer misconduct. The lawyer asks for an advance fee. Now, a lot of folks have no idea what I mean when I say the words advance fee, and that's understandable. We are one of the only states that allows lawyers to charge an advance fee. What that means is on the first day you hire them, let's assume they charge you $1,000 for a service, they take that money as income to themselves that day. They haven't done any work for you yet, but they've already taken the money as income to themselves. That's an advance fee. Not necessarily wrong, but you should be very, very careful under those circumstances. Well, what if the lawyer says, I charge a non-refundable fee, $1,000, but the very next day you decide to go to a different lawyer, you want your $1,000 back. He says, sorry, it was a non-refundable fee. That is unethical in California. A lawyer cannot charge you a non-refundable fee. That's bad, no matter what the circumstances are. Lawyer says he can guarantee results. Lawyers are prohibited from saying that. They cannot guarantee results. They can say they've handled similar cases and tell you about the results, but they can't guarantee you a particular result. Let's go to that last one. This is more common than unfortunately it should be. A lawyer says he or she is licensed in another state, but not in California. Well, say they have a license from the state of Arizona. It's a state right next to us. So isn't that okay, even though they're practicing in California? The answer is no. All lawyers are licensed by each state, all 50 states. So a lawyer who is licensed in Arizona cannot practice law in California. Even though they're a lawyer, yes, they have to have a California license. So make sure if they say, I'm licensed in another state, but that's okay, I can practice here in California. No, they can't. And lastly, the lawyer won't show you their current law license. Every lawyer gets a license from us, a plastic license, looks like a driver's license, although there's no picture, every single year. Every single year they get a new license from us, the state bar. So I decided to put up a picture of one of our licenses. So in case any of us have to hire a lawyer and you're a little suspicious, say, hey, Mr. Smith, can I see your license? If that lawyer is reluctant to show you their, what we call their bar card or their license, that's a red flag. This is what the law license in California looks like. And I circled 3 things on that license. First, notice on the top, the red circle, although it's shaded, you see the year 2014. If it says 2013, that's not a current license. Remember I said, we send one of those cards to every licensed lawyer every single year. So look for the current year there. Look in the lower left-hand corner, hopefully that's the way I left, the word active. The word active. 2 different words can be there, active and inactive. If it says inactive, it means they cannot practice law at the current time. It must say active. If it does, they are entitled to practice law in California in that year. And lastly, the circle in the lower right hand is, of course, my signature, the CEO of the State Bar of California. Those are the 3 things to look for when you're looking at someone's law license. Okay, those are some things you should look for when you're hiring a lawyer, just to make sure they're legitimate, they do the right thing, and it's got the red flags to make sure you're hiring a good lawyer. Well, let's say, unfortunately, it wasn't such a good lawyer. You gave him $2,000 for a service, he took the money, never did any services, and won't give you his money, your money back. We have a fund called the Client Security Fund. It's in essence a restitution fund. And that fund reimburses clients who sadly their lawyers stole their money. That's what that fund is all about. The fund does not reimburse for someone who is engaged in the unauthorized practice. But notice, since 1972, that fund has reimbursed qualified applicants 100 cents on the dollar for money stolen by their lawyers. And that is not tax dollars. Lawyers have to pay approximately $400 every single year to get their license renewed. $40 of that $400 goes into that fund every single year. It's the lawyers of California that fund that restitution fund. And it's there to protect the clients in case a lawyer steals the money. We're trying to get word of that out. As you can see, the fund's been there since 1972 because a lot of restitution funds that state agencies have are tax dollar funded and never have enough money to reimburse those who have been wronged and who are intended to be covered by the restitution fund. This fund has reimbursed 100 cents on the dollar since 1972. It's a record we do not intend to break, and we want to make sure that clients who've been wronged and had their money stolen by their lawyer are aware of the fund. If somebody needs to contact for any questions about the security fund, there it is. The last thing that I want to talk about very quickly is what about if I want to find a lawyer? Now, the State Bar is a regulatory body. We do not refer people to lawyers. Now, every lawyer in California, we have a page on that lawyer on our website. But it's not an advertising page, although some lawyers would like to use it for that. It gives basic information about when the lawyer, where he was educated, when he got his law license, and whether there's been any discipline against that lawyer by our discipline system, because we discipline the lawyers. And if they've committed bad acts, we'll suspend them, disbar them, or other penalties for bad acts to their clients. So there is a page, but it's not a website that you can search for a lawyer if you intend to hire one. That work of referring individuals to a lawyer is done at the local level by local bar associations and nonprofit legal services and local bars that have lawyer referral services. And if you need to get a referral of a lawyer in a particular matter that you're addressing, most of these services can assist. They try to vet the lawyers that they refer to you to make sure they are qualified and can provide the services that you need, but that's where you can get a referral to a lawyer on a particular service. It just talks a little bit about the lawyer referral service and what they will do. We certify those lawyer referral services, but I won't spend any time on that one, but just underscore the State Bar does not refer you to lawyers. It's the lawyer referral services that will do that. And of course, if you have a legal problem, they will arrange a consultation, ask a few questions about your potential case, and try to get you into the hands of the right individual. So with that, obviously we need to get on to our other presenters. I wanted to introduce everybody to the State Bar of California. Oftentimes we're not a well-known entity. We're trying desperately to become a well-known entity because unfortunately, I have to admit, sadly, we're proud of the legal profession, but we also know there's a lot more fraud that occurs by lawyers than we would want to see happen. We're trying to get ahead of that curve, and oftentimes clients who are victimized by bad lawyers don't know where to turn or sometimes are afraid to turn to, and we want to be out there to make sure everybody knows we are a public regulatory body. Our mission in law is to protect the public in regulating lawyers, and we're here to help. And if you have any questions, I'm easily reachable at the State Bar as the CEO and happy to answer any questions. And I think we have time for one or two questions. Yes? The question was, if someone feels victimized by a lawyer that they hired, but that person is here in an undocumented status, does their undocumented status affect their ability either to help us complain about the lawyer or to apply to that client security fund? The answer is it's irrelevant to us. It doesn't matter to us one's legal or documented status in the United States or here in California, United States. That's not relevant to us. We're regulating the lawyers. We know a lot of the immigration lawyers deal with undocumented individuals. We have to be there to protect those individuals as well as anybody else here in California. So great question. Thank you for asking. Any other questions? With that, everybody, thank you very, very much. Please enjoy the rest of the presentations this evening.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sergeant Mathhew Verzola with Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department out of Lakewood Station, and I have the privilege of being the service area manager for this great city of Hawaiian Gardens. I'd like to thank Assemblymember Rendon for allowing us to appear, as well as the Honorable Mayor who is here. Today we're talking about scams, particularly how scams affect victims of the state of California and the local areas and just the citizenry in general. One of the main scams that we've been seeing most recently deals with Green Dot Money Pack scams. The Green Dot, for those of you that aren't aware, the Green Dot Money Packs are basically prepaid cards similar to credit cards that can be purchased at local retail establishments, supermarkets, as well as Walmart. The difference between these cards is they're all prepaid and they're not associated with any sort of bank account. Therefore, they're not federally insured, which brings about the problem with the victim of the scam not being able to recoup any of the money of the loss. These scams can occur in a few ways. In the recent past, we've seen similar scams come out of Nigeria. Usually they're email phishing type scams where they get somebody to respond to an email. Once they verify an email address is valid, they request a money order check. They'll send a fraudulent check. They float a check basically to unsuspecting victim, and the victim would then be requested to go to the bank and try and cash it and send via money wire transfer the funds to somebody at an undisclosed account number. So these wire transfers are similar to the Green Dot Money Pack scams. However, the Money Pack scam is actually a prepaid kind of credit card. It's not associated, though, very important, it's not associated with any banking account number. The way these scams present themselves is the unsuspecting victim will receive a phone call. Once somebody answers the phone call at the other end, they may be told that the person calling, the caller is a representative of a government agency or some sort of utility service, for instance, Southern California Edison in our areas, or possibly maybe a private company. The scam involves a demand for money. The unsuspecting victim would be told that if you do not go and purchase a Green Dot Money Pack card and provide us with this serial number, we will shut off your electricity in the next hour. Okay? So the unassuming victim therefore feels a sense of duress. They run out, purchase the card, contact the number that's been given, and they provide the serial number to the would-be suspect or scam artist. The scam artist, once they have that serial number, they have the availability to immediately pull the funds off that card. And since the funds are not associated with the bank account, they're not insured. The victim is out the entire amount of money. So what can we do as citizens to not become victims of these types of scams? Well, the first and most important thing is to understand that federal law prohibits any debt collectors of any sort using intimidation tactics to gain money or to recoup a debt. So Southern California Edison will not call you with ultimatums. You will be given prior notice via mailings, telephone calls. However, you will not be given immediate orders to go out and purchase such a card. Okay. Additionally, it's important to understand that It's incumbent upon the citizens to verify any sort of phone number or any sort of fraudulent, any phone call that you receive that you think may be fraudulent. Good rule of thumb is to verify it on your own. Write down all the information they're willing to give you and hang up. And there's two things you can do. You can call law enforcement, and we can try and assist you in finding out whether or not the caller on the other end is legitimate. Or two, what you can do is you can call a published number that you're familiar with. For instance, if they claim to be Southern California Edison, you would call the published Southern California Edison number and provide them your account information. But most importantly, since we are aware these green dot money pack scams are happening, it's very pertinent that anytime somebody asks for money to be transferred via a green dot, and we want to very focus on that terminology, green dot, be aware that it may very well be a scam. Okay. Some other instances of scams we've seen using green dots have been used via job postings on, for instance, Craigslist, in the newspaper, things to that effect, where they're teaching you maybe a certain trade or giving you a class towards licensing, and they request payment to be made via green dot. Again, green dot, we know there's a high propensity of these cards to be used as scams. Therefore, it's very important that you verify the agency or organization that is putting together these types of trainings in order to make sure you keep yourself safe from becoming a victim. So I want to leave you with 3 points when we're dealing with green dot scams. First one is make sure that you verify. Hang up immediately and contact a published number. Secondly, legitimate organizations rarely call and demand things like immediate payment. If somebody does do that to you and additionally threatens the removal of some sort of services, make sure that you call your local law enforcement agency, one, to help you verify, or you're able to verify it on your own. And finally, take down as much information as you can and then hang up. The more information you can gain will help law enforcement in the future try and track down these people who are, in essence, scam artists. Thank you. Are there any questions? Yes, ma'am. Okay, the question is whether or not the green dot card is a Visa card. Unlike Visa cards, the green dot card is not associated with a particular account number. Okay, therefore it's not FDIC insured. So if there's any loss of funds from the green dot, the victim is really out the money. It's almost in essence an immediate wire transfer. It is purchased. The question was if it was a gift card. They are purchased similarly to gift cards. They can be found on turnstiles at the local grocery store, at Walmart, anywhere like that. So in essence, you think you may be getting something that there's a bank backing it or something. But in essence, it's just a technological wire transfer card. Okay? You're welcome. Thank you. Yes, sir. Yes, we have also seen scams. The question was posed that the internal people will call your home and represent themselves as the Internal Revenue Service or IRS. There have been several scams where people who have had past dealings with the IRS are called and requested to place a certain amount of money on a green dot card, acquire the card, and then come back and make a payment over the phone. The IRS would not do that. Remember, if it's green dot, we want to be very, very leery of it. Immediately hang up. And there are district numbers for the IRS, Just like any other government agency, you want to make sure that you call a published number to verify that it's a legitimate source. Yes, sir.
Cynthia, I wonder if you could touch on, I've received calls, but it's from immigration, which might be more relevant to our community here, saying, there's something wrong with the immigration status, and they try to get people really scared from that perspective. The sheriff is about to come and arrest them. So, I wonder if you could just touch a little on that.
Sure, I'd be happy to. The question was posed if similar instances regarding immigration status has instances regarding immigration status have been seen in these particular scams. I myself have not seen any personally. However, the perpetrators do pose as government agencies. So especially in the Southern California area, I could definitely see that occurring. The main thing is to understand that any law enforcement agency or any government agency is not going to make such a phone call, and we're definitely not going to ask for money, okay? And we're not going to demand that you provide money over the phone. If in any instance you're scared or leery, it's best to call your local law enforcement agency. You can call the sheriff's department. We'd be more than happy to come out and talk to you. And just know that if, for the most part, we wouldn't call you and say we're going to come arrest you. That's really not the way law enforcement works. Yes, ma'am.
If I find I've been a victim of identity theft, can I come to your office and file a report?
The question was if you become a victim of identity theft, if you can come to our office and file a report. Yes. The California statutes allow anyone who's a victim of identity theft to file a police report. Now, even if you're not aware of where the actual theft occurred or who perpetrated that theft, for instance, if you are a resident of the City of Hawaiian Gardens and you know that you've been a victim of identity theft, and maybe your identity was used in Northern California, you could contact the sheriff's department because you're a resident of Hawaiian Gardens, and we would be happy to take a police report for you using your home address.
Good evening. Mayor, Assemblymember Rendon, on behalf of Insurance Commissioner Dave Jones, I would like to thank you for having the Department of Insurance here to speak at the Scam Stoppers Workshop. Tonight, I'm going to talk about workers' compensation insurance fraud. Specifically, I'm going to be talking about applicant fraud. Tonight, I'm going to go over what is the fraud division, or who is the fraud division, what is insurance fraud, criminal investigation process, and the results of some of our investigations, especially of recent times. The Department of Insurance Fraud Division is the largest consumer protection agency in the state. We are a regulatory agency and we are a law enforcement agency. I work on the side of the law enforcement. However, we have a large, significant number of employees that deal with regulatory aspects of insurance sales. The Department of Insurance Fraud Division was established in 1979. We're made up of about 250 detectives, sergeants, and captains spread out throughout the state. During the course of our investigations, we will conduct undercover operations, surveillances, we will make arrests, and we do regularly execute search warrants. We also provide training to consumers, the insurance industry, law enforcement agencies, and other state agencies. And I happen to see that one of our partners was here today, one of our other stakeholders, the BAR. And we work very closely with them dealing with lawyers. We do have 9 offices throughout the state of California. The closest office to you for Hawaiian Gardens happens to be my office in the City of Commerce. It is the largest office in the state of California, and in a little while I'll show you why. We get our referrals or our crime reports from insurance industries, insurance companies, third-party administrators, the Workers' Comp Appeals Board, Medical Board of State of California, Contracted State Licensing Board, the FBI, Bar, and citizens. I commonly refer to those referrals as the X factor because a lot of times they come from the ex-wives, ex-husbands, ex-girlfriends, and ex-boyfriends. Now here's some pictures of our investigators when we're at the range, making arrests, and that is the fun aspect of the job. There's always a conclusion to our investigations. Again, here's the reason why LA is the largest office in the state of California. In the fiscal year 2012-2013, in workers' compensation, we received 2,123 referrals. The whole state received 5,084. That's almost 50% of all the referrals in the state of California for workers' comp. Overall, for all aspects of insurance fraud, because we don't investigate just insurance fraud, we investigate insurance fraud related to auto, health care, property casualty, which is any other type of insurance fraud that doesn't involve an auto policy or a workers' comp policy or a health care policy. And you can see that in the 2012-2013 arena, we received 12,644 referrals. Again, nearly half of all the referrals in the state of California. Last year, we received over 13,000 referrals out of a possible 30,000. Again, you can see why we are the largest office in the state. There are various types of workers' compensation insurance fraud. I already mentioned that tonight. I'm going to specifically talk about what we call applicant fraud or claimant fraud, where the individual is filing a fraudulent claim against their employer. But we also look at, again, attorneys and medical providers. Medical providers involve doctors who are providing services. However, they are paying people to come in and get those services rendered, or they're billing for services not even provided. They may bill for interpreting service when there's no interpreter involved. They may bill for surgeries when the surgeries weren't even performed. There's anything related to a medical bill that a doctor can provide for, if the service wasn't provided and a doctor bills for that service, that's a case that we would be investigating. Employers also commit insurance fraud by denying injured workers benefits, making statements that deny them the benefits. These statements must be a lie of some kind. For example, we've had cases where an employer threatens to have the employee deported if they file a workers' comp claim. They cannot do that in the state of California. That is illegal. We will investigate that, and we will present the findings of our investigation to the district attorney's office. And finally, insurance companies sometimes hire people and they don't realize that they're unscrupulous and unethical, and these people will steal money that is intended to go to the injured worker, and they'll find ways to take that money and put it into their own pockets. These are all the different types of investigations we handle in the workers' comp arena. Like any other crime in the state of California, there are elements that go along with the crime in order for it to be a crime. We call it milk. There are 4 elements to workers' compensation insurance fraud. A person has to make a material statement with a specific intent to obtain a benefit they're not entitled to receive. And they have to have knowledge that the benefit or the lie that they're telling is actually a lie. If they have no knowledge, and some people, if it happens over a significant course of time, they may forget. We understand that. But close time frames, specific events in life, things that could actually affect a claim, such as lying about a prior injury to the same body part, those are things that we're looking at. Those are significant events that people will remember. Since I've started with this department in 1992, I've identified about 6 different schemes common to applicant fraud. These include lying about a prior injury, denying working while receiving benefits, denying the ability to do various activities or functions that the applicant can actually do. An example of this would be somebody who goes and takes a deposition during their claim and tells the attorney who's handling or doing the deposition that they're unable to perform various activities like maybe playing softball or soccer or doing gardening at the house. And actually there's evidence that they've been involved in these activities prior to the deposition. They're saying they can't do it, but in actuality they can, and that can affect the claim. We would be looking at an investigation and DAs would determine whether or not to file criminal charges on a case like that. Another common scheme is being injured away from work and reporting it as a workers' comp claim. A lot of these involve weekend warriors, those that go out on the weekends and do all kinds of fun activities. They get injured, they may not have health insurance, so they decide that the employer should pay for that. And they file a workers' comp claim. Typically, these are unwitnessed accidents that happen at work, so there's nobody to say that it couldn't possibly happen. And finally, there are times when people will claim an injury occurred at work in a manner that would normally be covered by workers' comp, but it actually happened in a manner that would not be. An example of this would be horseplay. Or I'm going to show you another example later where somebody claims an injury during the time that a felony was taking place, a bank robbery. During that bank robbery, it turned out the person who claimed the injury was in fact part of the bank robbery. You can't claim an injury when you're involved in committing the felony or the crime. It just doesn't work. People make misrepresentations at a lot of different places. These include medical exams. When the doctor asks you specific questions about your injuries and how you're doing, you're expected to be truthful during your visit with the doctor. Whether it's the chiropractor, a physical therapist, nurses, whoever's asking those questions, you really need to be honest. If you're not, and it's material, it can be a crime. Depositions. You're sworn in to tell the truth. You need to tell the truth. If you lie about something that's material and you're doing it in order to obtain those benefits, we can open an investigation, and again, charges can be filed and you could be facing jail or prison time. If your case or your claim goes to the Workers' Comp Appeals Board and you are in front of a judge there and you're telling lies about your claim, and they, for example, have video of you doing all these things that you're claiming that you can't do, that could be a problem for you, not for them. Interviews with insurance company personnel are also areas where people commit lies or tell lies. I'm going to take a little turn here. Something else that we commonly do. We do this several times a year. We go out and we also look at the underground economy, because the underground economy is significant. It's in probably the $1 billion range right now of money that is not reported. We investigate companies that don't have workers' comp insurance. We investigate companies that may have workers' comp insurance but are paying their employees in cash and not reporting that money as income, so they pay a lower insurance premium than they're supposed to, so they underbid and get the jobs when other companies who are legitimate are not getting the jobs they should be getting. So we go out there with our partners, the Contractor State Licensing Board, EDD, Employment Development Department, ourselves and other state agencies, and we go out to various sites and we do inspections, and we determine, along with our partners, what, if any, criminal acts or regulatory acts, violations these companies are doing. And we get right then and there, we cite them, we issue citations, and we make sure that we try to even the playing field as much as possible. This is a press release. Every time we do an operation, we issue a press release. If you go to our website at the www.insurance.ca.gov and you go to the press section, you'll find all the press releases on our operations and arrests that we've done by year. Insurance fraud can be filed as a felony. You can be sentenced to up to 5 years in state prison and up to a $150,000 fine or double this fine depending on the fraud amount. If you committed fraud and you got $1 million, you can be fined up to $2 million. Quite a bit significant amount of money. Restitution. The district attorney's office does like to try to recover restitution. This helps offset, the overcrowding in jails and things of that nature, and they try to get people to pay back any money they received by fraudulent means. We also look at other charges. We look at people who conspire to commit insurance fraud, especially when we're dealing with provider fraud, medical providers. There's usually more than one person involved in that, or attorneys who are doing that. Employers who are committing the premium fraud and lying to get lower premiums. Typically, there's always more than one person involved in that, and we try to get as many people as possible who are committing insurance fraud and get them in the handcuffs or the bracelets that they deserve to be in. There's a 4-year statute of limitations on insurance fraud. We can extend that depending on the number of acts that they committed and how recent those acts are. One of the things that we try to do is prevent people from doing this by showing how active we are in the types of cases we're investigating. So we are very heavily involved in social media. One of the main areas that we use is Flickr. Flickr is probably our most vital social media program out there. We've got I can't even remember the number of hits that we have. I know it's skyrocketed in the last year and a half. We've actively pursued putting video on Flickr. All of our press releases go on Flickr, press conferences, anything and everything goes on Flickr. And if you're really interested in seeing some very interesting stuff, I would highly recommend you subscribe to our Flickr account and be accessible to the information that we put out to the citizens as well as to the media. I talked about this a little while ago. This was an arrest we made out of my office involving a lady who claimed she was kidnapped. Her husband was kidnapped. She worked at the bank. She was sent to the bank with a bomb strapped to her neck to make a withdrawal. Well, unfortunately for her, it was discovered that she was one of the criminals committing the bank robbery. There was no kidnapping. There wasn't a husband at home who was being held against his will. And as a result, she ended up getting federally convicted on the bank robbery charges. And then we went ahead and pursued charges against her locally by the LA County District Attorney's Office, another one of our dear partners involved in workers' comp insurance investigations and prosecutions. And they went ahead and prosecuted her are prosecuting her for the workers' comp insurance fraud. There was a mother and son who committed insurance fraud by signing checks that were going to a dead claimant. They thought it would be okay to continually sign her name to the checks, and the son would go cash them to the tune of $165,000. We were able to arrest both of those individuals. And the stories go on and on with the other press releases. Our goal is basically to review all the referrals that come through our door, determine the best way possible to investigate them, use the information and all available manpower, and investigate and prosecute the person suspected of committing insurance crimes. And it's very important to realize that each of us are a victim, because what happens is when people file workers' comp claims, especially the fraudulent claims, we pay higher rates on products, we pay higher rates on insurance. When employers have to pay more money for their insurance, it trickles down. Everything trickles down to the citizen. I'm a citizen, I don't like to pay more than I have to. You're a citizen, Mayor, you don't like it either, do you? No, none of us like that. So we're out there fighting for you, the citizens of California, in this fight against insurance fraud. And like I said, this is just one avenue that we investigate. The other avenue that's being hit hard is the auto insurance industry. I can give a whole nother presentation on auto insurance fraud, and I don't have time to do it tonight. They would shoot me if I did that. I could spend another whole half hour to 8 hours talking about insurance fraud. The one thing I will say is when you're driving a car, be cautious and be careful about your surroundings and what's going on around you. And if something is making you think that something's going on, that somebody may be thinking about getting in front of you and slamming on their brakes, you're probably right. Slow down and back off that car. And that's all I'll say about insurance fraud tonight, auto insurance fraud tonight. Right now, if there's any questions.
If you are working for someone who you get injured or legitimately injured, and they tell you not to report it, how do you get help for that?
Okay, the question is, if you're working for an employer and you legitimately get injured and they tell you not to report it, how do you get help for that? There's a couple of different things you can do. One, actually there's several different things you can do. Find out who their insurance company is and report it. 2, contact the Department of Insurance Fraud Division and let us know what's going on. We may want to set up some kind of investigation, maybe do an undercover, maybe do some surveillances and see what's going on at that employer. And 3, you have a right not to file a claim, but we hope that if you are injured legitimately, you follow through and get the benefits you deserve to get. Any other questions? Well, again, yes, sir.
I noticed that you're carrying a weapon. You guys all are under the sheriff department, or how do you get your training? And did you ever use kind of deadly force for such incidents?
Okay. Let me go back a couple of, can you figure out what's going on there? I want to go back a couple of slides and show you something. But to answer your question, we are not with the Sheriff's Department. We are our own law enforcement agency. We are part of the Department of Insurance. We are under a branch called the Enforcement Branch. It's broken into 2 divisions, the Investigations Division and the Fraud Division. When we hired individuals to become peace officers and part of our unit, detectives, we send them through a full academy like the Sheriff's Academy. We will send them to academies down like in Golden West. Whatever agency or whatever department or college is putting on an academy, we get them into those academies and get them trained just like any of the law enforcement profession. Using deadly force, fortunately, knock on wood, we haven't had to use deadly force in any instances. However, in looking at, hope I included the slide. There we go. Yeah. I glossied over that because of time frame, but in all honesty, we have come across all kinds of things during search warrants that would surprise people because they would think white-collar crime, which insurance fraud is typically classified as, but as you can see in this picture, things we've come across, assault rifles, AK-47s, large sums of money. The bottom left one is one of my favorites. It's books on how to create bombs, hand grenades. Somebody had all kinds of weapons and ammo, and in the middle of that we found the Workers' Comp Labor Code book. So I thought that was kind of interesting. This is stuff we come across, it's not uncommon to come across this kind of stuff. That is why we, for our safety, we have to carry sidearms. When we go in and do a search warrant, you will see us in our enforcement attire. So people recognize us, and it says police on the back. It has all of our badges and everything like that. We wear a bulletproof vest, so we go home at the end of the day. But fortunately, we haven't had to use that. We have had, obviously arresting people, you use your hands and you have to subdue individuals. But no deadly force has been used as of yet, and hopefully it stays that way.
Good evening. My name is Antonia Villasenor, and I work for the Education and Outreach Division of the California Department of Business Oversight. Buenas, mi nombre es Antonia Villasenor y yo trabajo por el Departamento de Supervisión de Empresas del Estado de California y yo trabajo para la División de Educación y Alcance Público. Hoy día voy a explicar lo que hace el papel del departamento en el Estado y cómo ayuda a consumidores. Voy a explicar nuestro papel dirigiendo las leyes, supervisando las leyes sobre los servicios financieros en el Estado y voy a explicar los diferentes servicios que supervisamos y cómo prevenir las estafas de los servicios financieros. Primero, quiero dar muchas gracias al alcalde, a la ciudad, al assemblista Rendon y al Chamber of Commerce del Hawaiian Gardens. Es un placer estar aquí y tener esta oportunidad a explicar nuestros servicios a usted. El departamento en inglés es the Department of Business Oversight, en español es el Departamento de Supervisión de Empresas. Y somos un nuevo departamento en que el año pasado 2 departamentos, el Departamento de Instituciones Financieras y el Departamento de Corporaciones, mezclaron. En los 2 departamentos, nosotros tenemos supervisión, responsabilidades de supervisar muchos diferentes modos y negocios y personas que dan servicios financieros. Son como gente que dan hipotecas para casas, residencias, la gente que dan servicio a esas hipotecas, la gente que que venden seguridades, bancos que tienen licencia del Estado, cooperativos de crédito y los transmisores de dinero, la gente esos negocios que envían dinero a otros lugares. Y también las compañías que ayudan con crédito y guían a ayudar a los consumidores a manejar sus deudas. Lo que nosotros hacemos en el departamento es que damos licencia a esos negocios y antes de eso revisamos a las personas para asegurar que son gente de buena que se comportan y que no tienen que no hicieron crímenes en otros lugares con esos tipos de productos financieros. También tenemos un equipo de examinadores que van a muchos de los negocios y revisan el negocio para asegurar que todo está manejado como debe de estar, que todo está en orden. También, si es necesario, hacemos investigaciones, tenemos investigadores y tenemos abogados que si es necesario podemos perseguir a la gente en corte. Y mi papel, y tenemos un departamento que nuestro papel es de ir a la comunidad, con la comunidad y dar presentaciones y dar educación de cómo prevenir estafas en la comunidad. Porque lo mejor es de prevenir si es posible, porque ya cuando se está robando dinero es difícil a regresarlo. El primero, hay muchos diferentes de fraudes. El primero que quiero identificar es el fraude de afinidad. Fraude de afinidad pasa, vamos a dar un ejemplo, a veces en un templo, un equipo, un club, donde la gente se conocen y tienen confianza. A veces la gente, un estafero, entra y se involucra por unos meses, a veces un año, hasta que la gente le tienen confianza y lo conocen. Y entonces le ofrecen, mira, a ti, porque somos hermanos en este club, en esta iglesia, te voy a dar un interés en esta oportunidad de negocio de 38%, o un porcentaje que es exagerado. Ahorita, el porcentaje que le dan no es mucho en inversiones legales. ¿Okay? Lo que decimos es, primero, tenga cuidado cuando le ofrecen algo así. La primera pregunta que queremos que hacen es por favor que le dan su licencia. La gente que quieren invertir su dinero necesitan una licencia por el Departamento de Servicios de Supervisión de Empresas en California. Si no quieren darse su número de licencia, entonces retírese, porque ese no es una buena oportunidad, es un buen robo. Entonces, si le dan el número de licencia, llámenos, asegura que es activo y que están en buen estatus. Y también puede preguntar cuando llame, o si mira en internet, puede ver si han tenido una queja o una demanda contra ellos. Puede revisar y chequear antes que invierta. Eso es muy, muy importante. Hay muchos diferentes, un esquema que se llama es Ponzi Scheme. Y eso pasa cuando una persona le ofrece una inversión y en vez de invertir ese dinero, toma ese dinero y lo paga como interés a otra gente. Y nunca hay un negocio legítimo ahí. Nomás está robando de uno y pagando a otro. Y, en fin, ellos desaparecen con su dinero. También quiero hablar de fraude de hipotecas. Todavía sí hay muchos problemas y queremos, como nosotros supervisamos y damos licencia a la gente que están licenciados en hipotecas en California. Si hay problemas, nosotros queremos saber. Es muy importante que gente sabe que no tienen que pagar por adelantado para asistencia para modificar su hipoteca. No es legal en California a pagar adelantado. Mucha gente fueron le quitaron su dinero y también perdieron su casa así. También le dicen, mira, nomás pon la casa en mi nombre y yo te arreglo todo. Yo te lo arreglo todo. Y esa otra manera que la gente perdieron su casa. So, no le firma su casa a nombre a otra persona si están tratando de modificar su hipoteca. También le dicen, no haga el pago mientras que yo te estoy arreglándolo. Yo te arreglo, guarda tu dinero, nomás págame a mí. Eso es una estafa. Sí, tienen que seguir haciendo sus pagos como hizo en su contrato, como llegó en su contrato que usted firmó con el banco, con la compañía. Si hay cualquier problema con esas compañías, nosotros queremos que se comunica con el Departamento de Supervisión de Empresas para que podamos ayudarle. Si nosotros no somos los supervisores, si es federal, mandamos su queja a esa agencia donde debe de estar. También es muy importante tener seguridad por el Internet. Mucha gente puede ir a lugares como Starbucks o otros lugares públicos donde le dan free Wi-Fi, que es gratis al Internet. Tenga cuidado, en esos lugares no quiere revisar su cuenta de banco, porque no tiene control de quién más puede mirar lo que está mirando en su computadora. So, asegura que cuando está usando su computadora, lo está haciendo en un lugar seguro. Okay. También oímos mucho del robo de identidad. Eso es muy serio, me pasó a mí, pasa a mucha gente. Y no es su culpa, es la primera cosa. Pasa a miles de gente cada día. Un consumidor puede hacer todo muy cuidadoso y todavía le pega. Es como la lotería, le pega el número. So, nunca tenga pena si haya que alguien le usó su identidad. Lo más importante paso es de pedir sus reportes de crédito cada año. Los puede pedir por gratis. Nosotros en nuestra información le podemos dar información de cómo conseguir ese reporte por gratis. Y también está disponible en nuestro cita en el website, por el Internet. Revisa su reporte de crédito y asegura que todos los deudas y cuentas son suyos. Y si no, quéjalos. Puede hacer un reporte con la policía y con ese se comprueba que fue un robo de identidad. Y puede mandar comunicaciones a las compañías y también a los lugares de crédito para que saben que eso no es su deuda, para limpiar su reporte de crédito. Muchas veces regresan los deudas y nomás si uno tiene su reporte de robo de identidad con la policía, nomás se lo manda por correo o por fax y ya no le deben de molestar después de eso. Mucha gente no sabe que tiene el derecho de poner un reporte con la policía sobre su robo de identidad. Es muy importante que sabe que tiene ese derecho y que guarda esos papeles y que los usa en caso si le sucede que le persiguen para ese dinero que no es su deuda de veras. Nosotros en el departamento, esquemas de teléfono. Uno que hemos oído mucho, nosotros le decimos la esquema de los abuelitos. Llaman en la mera noche, a veces a las 2 de la mañana. Abuelita, uno contesta hasta un poco desvelado, ¿verdad? Abuelita, ayúdame. Oh, Juanito, ¿eres tú? Porque a veces tenemos un Juanito que nos estamos sorprendidos que llama a las 2 de la mañana pidiendo ayuda, ¿verdad? Y empieza con una cuenta. Estoy en el cárcel, estoy en el hospital, tuve un choque y necesito 500 hasta 3, 4, 5 mil dólares. Y por favor, envíalo inmediatamente y no le dices a mi papá, ¿verdad? Y esto pasa mucho y lo que decimos es tenga cuidado, no manda ese dinero hasta que ha confirmado con su familiar que de veras ellos necesitan el dinero. Okay. Tenga mucho cuidado de esas llamadas estafas. También he oído en unos lugares donde gente se pone en la calle con una encuesta y le prometen a gente hasta $400 si llenan esta encuesta. ¿Y qué tiene la encuesta? Quieren su número de seguro, su número de licencia, su domicilio. Nomás es un robo de identidad. Y la gente se queja porque no le mandan su $400. So, nunca da su información privada a gente que se lo piden por una razón que usted no sabe. Nomás se lo da a gente con que usted sabe quién son y por qué están haciendo negocios con ellos. Si alguien le llama y le dice, nosotros somos el departamento de seguro y necesitamos confirmar su número. No, el seguro sabe su número, se lo dieron. Okay, no es necesario dar eso. A veces los estaferos hasta marcan en su teléfono identificación que son de un banco y un teléfono. Ya saben cómo manipular eso. So, no tenga confianza en su caller ID. Llaman y dicen, somos del banco y necesito confirmar tu número antes de cuenta, antes que podamos seguir. Pues no, cuelga el teléfono, abre tu reporte del banco de cada mes y llama al teléfono ahí y habla directamente con el banco. Muchas veces no es legítimo, fue alguien que le quería estafar. So, la gente que le llaman a usted y le piden su teléfono, su seguro, su número de licencia, muchas veces eso no es legítimo y tiene que tener mucho cuidado a quien da su información. También mucha gente les dicen, tú ganaste, reciben recados, tú ganaste este dinero, pero nunca entraron a un juego. Okay. Y te vamos a dar $30,000 si nos das un cheque de $20 nomás para hacer arreglar el papelero. Es ilegal a cobrarle cualquier centavo para cualquier premio. Los premios, son gratis. Okay, so esa es una bandera roja si le preguntan. Las maneras en que la gente que quieren robar su identidad, las maneras en que consiguen su información son varios y muchos. A veces cuando usamos su tarjeta de débito, en los cajones, en sus cajas del cartero, nunca deja sus biles que va a pagar con cheques afuera en la casa para que recojan la gente del correo. Lleva lo mismo a la oficina del correo y deposita ahí mismo. Por teléfono, por amistades y familiares, en los internet, en Facebook, mucha gente sin saber dan mucha información ahí y lo ponen público. Los basuras. Es importante a tener cualquier bill, si lo va a tirar, o reporte con la información personal, que lo machuca, que consigue una máquina que le machuca su correo al papel, para que gente no lo pueden sacar de su bote de basura y mirar. Mailing list, cuando vas a alguna tienda y tienen un carro nuevo y quieres llenar una tarjetita para ganar este coche, muchas veces venden esa información a mucha otra gente y usted no tiene control de su nombre, su domicilio, su teléfono después de eso, a quien lo vende. Para prevenir fraude es importante conocerse mismo y si algo no le fija bien, no le suena bien, escucha eso, es muy importante. Si es demasiado bueno, ¿cómo se dice en español? Una limosna tan exagerada que hasta los santos lo dudan. Okay. Tenga cuidado. Nunca deja a nadie que entre a su casa si quieren vender algo, reparar algo, si usted no los invitó mismo. Si vienen, mira, estoy pintando la casa al lado y aquí a ti te doy, tengo pintura que me queda y nomás se lo pintan unos $50, $500. A veces, dame medio y vengo mañana. Se toman el dinero y se van. ¿Ok? Antes que hace cualquier inversión, llámenos primero, revisa todas sus opciones, compara ese producto a otros. ¿Es el mejor para usted? Y habla con alguien con quien tiene confianza. Porque a veces nos animamos y no es el momento, no es lo mejor para nosotros, no es el más apropiado, pero estamos tan animados con tanto entusiasmo que pensamos que esa es una buena inversión. Es porque dicen, toma el tiempo, nunca toma prisa. A veces le dan mucho prisa, firmarlo hoy. Este nomás es para esta semana y después de eso ya vas a perder todo este dinero. No, toma el tiempo, lleva su reporte en papel. Si no tienen algo de papel, retírese. Si al caso sí tiene que dar una queja con el departamento, nosotros se lo podemos ayudar por teléfono a tomarlo. Lo puede llenar el papel, le mandamos la forma por correo o lo puede tomar por el internet. No es necesario saber la ley, nomás queremos saber con qué compañía tuvo el problema, qué pasó, su nombre, qué fue el problema y qué resolución quiere usted para arreglar la situación. Y tenemos gente que habla muchos idiomas por teléfono y por favor llámenos con sus preguntas. Estoy muy alegre a estar aquí con ustedes. Estamos disponibles para contestar sus preguntas por teléfono gratis y también hay mucha información sobre el Departamento de Supervisión de Empresas por el Internet. Muchas gracias. Bait and switch is when I'm selling you this particular product, and we sit down and I need to do this in English now. I'll do it real fast. Yeah. Okay. Bait and switch is when I offer you one product, and when you go sign the contract or when it's time to deliver, they deliver something else. They bait you with one product and then they switch to another product.
Also, another question for you is some way to collect information. You mentioned of shorties or something. How do they collect number?
Which one? Sorry.
The one where they can collect information from the garbage. The one before last.
Trash cans.
No, the one after.
Obituaries.
How can they collect information?
Okay, obituaries are published often in newspapers, online, and folks know then that person has died. And they will try to take advantage of that sometimes. They will try to use their credit, their social security number. They'll try and go rob the house. You know, they can find out when the service is, and they go to the house and rob it when they know everybody's at the service. Folks have also tried to appropriate their deeds. In a time of flux, when a family's dealing with a lot of issues, sometimes people try and literally by paper at the county register, they try to steal a house when they know somebody has passed away. Folks also steal identities of children who've passed away because they know they'll have clean financial records, clean credit records. So all kinds. Sometimes you see obituaries for children, and people are very creative. I'm going to do this real quick in English. Yes, go ahead.
Sometimes you get calls from people collecting money for sheriff department or police departments. Are you obliged to listen to them, or they are just agencies? Right?
You are not obliged to listen to anyone who calls you if you don't want to. There are lots of people who claim they're from charities, from everything from Save the Latest Country, who's had an earthquake, to police unions, to fire associations, and what we say is hang up and check with your local municipal, if you want to give to your local fire department, call them and ask them how you can donate. You can also, check with the Attorney General's office as to charity scams. They're very interested in that. I can do a quick review in about 5 minutes about the department in English for you. Okay, let me get, so let's go back to the beginning. There. Hi, I'm Antonia Villasenor, and I'm with the California Department of Business Oversight. We're a new regulatory agency. We've been formed last year by the merger of the California Department of Financial Institutions and the California Department of Corporations. Both agencies regulate a whole range of financial services to consumers throughout the state of California. They include money transmitters, residential mortgages that are licensed in California, loan servicers, and title and escrow companies. We also review securities, people who sell securities, state chartered banks, credit unions, money transmitters, and credit companies, and individuals that guide and manage to settle consumer debt. My role at the department is of education and outreach. We work throughout the state to educate consumers as to what the department does. And even though we've been around for 100 years now, we have a new name, and a lot of people aren't familiar with us. So that's our role, to go out and let people know what we do and how to avoid becoming victims of fraud and financial fraud and scams. The department licenses, examines, reviews, investigates, prosecutes folks when it's necessary in relation to the financial services I mentioned earlier. The Department the Outreach and Education team goes out to educate communities all across the state as to, again, what we do and how to avoid scams. We want people to call us with their questions. We want people to ask us if somebody is offering them financial services. We want people to ask us for that servicer's license number and to confirm that with us, and they can check to see if somebody has any complaints against them or not. Businesses can also call us and make sure that they're in compliance, or if they have questions about the regulations that we have oversight on, so we can help them stay in compliance with those regulations. We have the most common financial fraud that we hear about a lot in the department is affinity fraud. Affinity fraud is particularly ugly because it affects people really close to home and sometimes violates a sacred trust. People in their churches, in their clubs, in their very close communities sometimes are approached by somebody who they think they're really familiar with. These fraudsters often get involved for 6 months, for a year, and then after a while they'll offer a really amazing interest rate, because we're brethren, because I know you, I'm going to offer you this great deal. And often it turns out to be a fraud. So if they're offering you 38% guaranteed, then you know it's a fraud. So what we say is check with us first and make sure that the license is intact. The other thing to watch out for, as I just said earlier, is it an unreasonable rate of return? Because if folks are offering ridiculous rates, guaranteed return, then you know it's not real. What a lot of scammers do in affinity fraud, and as well as Ponzi schemes, is they'll take the money, and they may even pay some interest for a while that they promised. And people get really excited, and they tell their friends, and they tell their neighbors, and lots of people jump in. Meanwhile, there's no real investment going on. The money is coming from the consumers and going to pay the other scam victims. And after a while, these folks disappear with their money. So one way to really prevent that is to check people's licenses and make sure that they're in order. Also, to review the documents that they give you. Make sure they have documents that clearly explain, understand what you're investing in. We also want to talk about phone scams. One of the big phone scams we hear a lot about that I was asked to talk about tonight is what we call the grandma scam. where people call on the phone, often in the middle of the night, and someone answers the phone and say, "Grandma, is that you?" And sometimes in some families, we're not surprised if somebody calls at 2 in the morning asking for help. So they may say a whole lot. They have amazing stories for why they need your money. They may be in jail. They may claim you have a bill in Mexico that you need to pay right away. They may say they're going to shut off your lights or they're going to come arrest you if you don't pay a parking ticket. They may say they're in jail in another country or in the hospital or they've been in a car accident. And it all ends with you need to send money right away. So confirm that this is a legitimate call. Hang up. Somebody claims you owe a debt. Get in touch with the business who claims you owe them money. Somebody says they're in trouble. Call them up yourself. Find out if they're in trouble or not. Okay? Identity scam is a real problem, and they get your information in all kinds of ways, through the ATM, mailboxes, internet, telephone. What we say is guard your personal information. Don't give it to anybody who's coming to you and asking for it unless you know who you're talking to. If you've gone to the IRS office and they ask you for your information, that's legitimate. When you open a bank account, they will ask you at the branch for your information. That's legitimate. But if somebody on the street is doing a survey, and I've heard of this, if somebody calls your house and says, "We're from the IRS, so we need to confirm your social security number," that's bogus. I myself got a call the other day at 6:50 in the morning, a robocall from something claiming to be the IRS. I knew it was bogus. Be careful of the trash can. Don't throw out anything that may have your personal information without shredding it first. And people also gain information from obituaries and from mailing lists. There's a whole range. A consumer can do everything right and be careful and still get their identity stolen. So we say it's really important to know your rights. Fraud prevention. Trust your instincts. Never let somebody in your house unsolicited to come in your door and offer you some crazy deal. Check your credit report annually. We have in our materials, and you can look on the internet, how to check your credit report for free with each credit bureau. And never give out personal information unless you initiate the contact. Our big message is to check before you invest. You can call us, look on the internet, you can look up people's licenses, make sure that they're licensed. One of our attorneys has told us that the majority of her cases wouldn't exist if people had taken this first step, an important step. Compare your product to others, make sure you're getting the best deal, and consult with someone who you trust. Sometimes we get carried away by enthusiasm and excitement. It's important to take the literature, and there should be literature about any financial product, and take and show it to somebody who's sensible and that you know who's knowledgeable, and show them the information. You can always call us at our toll-free phone number. We have operators and translators who speak many languages and will be happy to help you with your questions. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Scott Smith. I'm the Executive Director of the Cerritos Regional Chamber of Commerce, proudly serving the business community here in the City of Hawaiian Gardens. I'd like to thank Assemblymember Rendon and the City of Hawaiian Gardens, Mayor Rodriguez, for hosting this event tonight. This is important information that everyone should know. I'd like to thank Joe Dunn with the State Bar of California, the California Department of Insurance, of course, the California Department of Business Oversight for all the critical and important information that was shared tonight. Needless to say, we're all a little safer now, and we should be aware of all those scams that are out there. It only takes a second or two of prevention for all of us to be safe and secure. Thanks again, have a good evening, and we look forward to seeing you soon.